must have fallen asleep or something, because all of a sudden I was having this really terrible dream. And I couldn't stop crying. I was crying, and you weren't even really awake. And I remember you grabbed me. I remember you were just holding me so tight all of a sudden. You said, I'm right here. And I'm gonna hold on to you, and I'm never gonna let you go. Right then, I knew that I would never feel more loved. Or more known. Look, I know it's small. I know it's a really small moment. It's not even a good story.
This is a pretty good story.
I love you. I love you. You're my story, Sam. You.
As I mentioned before, Rookie Blue has just started its 5th season on ABC. Fans have been waiting for its return, especially since the last time they saw Sam in the season 4 finale, he'd been shot and was being rushed to the hospital with Andy by his side. And Ben Bass is here to talk about the show, his character, and much more, and it's a pleasure to have him join us on Talking with Hollywood. Hi, Ben. Welcome to the program.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure as well, and, this is an exciting time for Rookie Blue. It just started its 5th season on ABC, and, sometimes network television is unfortunately known for how quickly TV shows come and go. Some cop shows have definitely been in that loop, but 5 seasons strong, this show seems to be really hitting a stride, and audiences are really enjoying it.
Yeah, apparently, in Hollywood parlance, if you get 5 seasons, that means you're a bona fide hit. So,
oh, well, good. There you go.
5 seasons in, that's where we're at, and it's been a great run for us. You never know how a show's going to do when it starts out, and you really don't have any expectations. You try not to anyway, and we were really pleased at the results, and I think the timing was very good for essentially the style of show that we have, and then we have drama. We also have there's some good humor in it too, and a lot of relationship stories. So. The audience it seems to have really resonated with them.
Yeah, and when a show has success like this, there's obvious reasons for why it's good for the actors involved. But I also think it has to be great for your character, Sam, as well, because you've obviously been through a lot as this character and had the chance to live out quite the story already.
Yeah, he's covered a lot of ground. I think that's a good point, and it's made it interesting to play from the beginning. As I said, you never know, not only do you know how the show's going to do, but you don't know where your character is going to go. But it's always interesting to play. Love stories are always going to be interesting to play, especially when there are major obstacles. And this is really, in its own way, a modern-day Romeo and Juliet. And the obstacles, I've said it before, the obstacles that Sam and Andy have to face that are different from Romeo and Juliet are that the obstacles are internal as opposed to external. And as an actor, that's really where you want to be. It keeps it interesting and fascinating. And we pick up season 5, where essentially Andy has said that she's still in love with me, and I tell her that I'm still in love with her. So there's this big friendly question mark about where we're going to go. And we've had a really great time filming episodes for season 5. We've got some really interesting ones. There's some great crimes to be solved, and great relationships to be explored.
Yeah, that was a really great way, I think, to kind of tie up a loose end again and kind of leave audiences looking forward to something in season 5. Having the last thing they saw is the two of you in the ambulance and in the story she shares with you. Granted, audiences are going to be anticipating that, but I have to think for you as well, you probably couldn't wait to pick up those first couple of scripts for season 5 and see where this goes as well.
Yeah, I like to joke about, not knowing whether or not I was going to die.
Yeah.
But so I was, at one point I was pleased to find out that I was still alive, but I think that, they want to keep Sam alive so that one way or another they can try to get these two back together again. That's, the audience has been bucking for that since the beginning, and it seems to be one of the key factors in keeping their interest, and they've got a lot invested in this relationship, as do the characters. So the first couple episodes where he's recovering from his gunshot wound, and he's got some family that comes in, and I don't want to give too much away, but it does. This season we get into sort of Sam's dark past and dark family past a little bit more, which was fun to play.
Yeah, you talk about how much Sam and Andy have gone through in the show so far, and how audiences have really been invested in that. And they've seen those two characters go through a lot. But do you think that there's a challenge at any point in time where the writers of the show are just going to have to just get those two characters together and have them stay together for a while before the fans go nuts?
Well, I think some of the fans have gone nuts already, which is great. But yeah, for sure. I think it's a challenge for the writers because you want to keep that tension, but you also want to deliver. You want to give the audience what they're wanting, and at the same time somehow maintain the kind of spark and the chemistry and the kind of dynamic from the tension that arises from there being some kind of strife between them, or basically that they have challenges, and that is I don't want to give too much away, but that's definitely something that we explore much more in depth in season 5, and I think the audience is going to they'll get a lot out of it in terms of story, but it also, these are stories that affect all of our lives and all of our relationships, and I think that's one of the other reasons why these stories resonate, is because we all face these struggles, and the question is, how do you cope with them? How do you make a relationship work? What do you have to do? Where do you go? What are the mistakes you make, and how do you fix your mistakes and make amends and move forward?
Yeah, I definitely think that is a key component to why audiences have been so attached to that relationship, because it isn't necessarily a stereotypical, just cookie-cutter, on-TV, on-screen romance that other shows might have. Not only are you dealing with some real-life things that people go through, couples go through, but also I think what's been great, and I'm sure enjoyable for you as you've lived through this character season after season, that Andy has had a direct impact on Sam's attitude, approach to life, his work. I would think that has to be a rewarding story to be involved in, just from that aspect of it.
Yeah, it really lends a lot to when Missy and I do scenes together. We have a really good chemistry and a good understanding of each other in terms of how we see the characters and their relationship. So we really get to sink our teeth into the ideas that, the stories that the writers are coming up with. And as you say, it is challenging for them to explore that, for the writers to explore it, and to keep it interesting. But they've come up with some great stuff and been I think overall very successful with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so Missy and I, some of our favorite scenes to shoot, and Missy says this all the time, and I feel the same way, or when Andy and Sam have to get into it emotionally, when they have to face some deep challenge that affects them, that affect their relationship, and are they going to move forward? Can they move forward? How are they going to move forward? That sort of thing. And so because we have a real connection with those scenes, I think that the audience always just gets tuned right into it, and they really get to enjoy the connection and the chemistry that Missy and I have that we get to bring to those scenes. And as I said, it makes them very enjoyable to shoot.
I bet.
Challenging, but enjoyable.
Yeah.
It's never... Doing challenging emotional scenes is never easy, but it can be rewarding.
Well, that's the romantic side of the character. Let's talk a little bit about the officer side of him. What did you do to prepare for that aspect of the show? Did you get a chance to hang out with some officers for a few days, or maybe interview some of them as you prepared to play Sam for the first time?
I went to consult with a really interesting former police officer who had spent a lot of time undercover.
Mm-hmm.
And he was extraordinary. He had gotten up to all kinds of interesting undercover situations and made some very, very major arrests. And he was able to connect me with a superintendent from one of the big divisions in Toronto. And I went there and spent some time with them, and then we did some ride-alongs. We did some training as well. All the main cast of the show did training in the beginning, but the ride-alongs were a whole experience unto themselves.
I bet.
And to experience experience is just, these men and women have a lot of fun doing what they're doing. It's dangerous. It can be boring, but it can also be really exciting. And, the ones that love it really do love it. And I think that really helped. I wasn't really thinking so much about that consciously at the beginning, but looking back and, when I did eventually watch the show, I felt that had come across for my character, which was a surprise because I was just kind of immersed in it. And so it was nice to see that had come across in a way that I think does justice to the men and women that I met with and their relationship to their jobs.
Absolutely. As you went into this, you were talking just a second ago about, how in that case, the impact of meeting with those officers and being able to hang around them, how you actually retained a lot more than you realized, and, you're kind of seeing that now. As an audience, that have watched cop shows over the years, we all have kind of an idea of what it's like to be in one because we see how a lot of them unfold. I'm sure you had some expectations going in as to what it was going to be like, and I was just wondering if there's any element about playing a police officer or being in a cop show that you found out or have learned that you weren't expecting shortly after getting the part.
You really never know how it's going to turn out. You do all the homework that you can, and I had the good fortune of having worked with the executive producers and a number of the writers on previous projects. So we kind of knew each other's rhythms. They knew my rhythms as an actor. I knew their rhythms as writers and producers. And that goes a long way to developing a character and having a feel for what, they're going for. So in terms of the development of this guy, I kind of felt like I had a handle on basically who he was and what they had in mind, the executive producers. I kind of felt I had a handle on that from the beginning. So the things that were surprising to me, I guess, was, as I said, one thing was that when I watched the show and saw what I was doing in it, I realized, I didn't realize what came across to me was how much he loves his job. And I was like, oh, that's great. He really loves his job.
Okay.
So I don't know why that didn't occur to me at the time, but it didn't. And so I'm certainly glad it came across. Other than that, the challenge is, for me anyway, is trying to find an individual emotional value to the different stories. One of my favorite television actors, he did a lot of TV, was Michael Moriarty when he was on Law and Order.
Yeah.
And one of the extraordinary things that, for me, he did so beautifully was he seemed to have a very specific emotional relationship to each case that he was involved with.
Okay.
And that's a very hard thing to do, but that's what I strive to do. And I think that's the big challenge for me. And I don't know, the audience is going to have to be the judge of how well I do at that. But that's always something that keeps me guessing. It keeps me working hard, keeps me on my toes, and keeps me striving to learn and to do better.
No, that's great. It's really cool when you can have that, experience of kind of stepping out of character for a moment and kind of watching it as a viewer and seeing the impact it has on you as you watch. It's cool that you've been able to take away some things from that. As you talk about preparing for these things, what would you say is probably one of the most challenging stories that you had to prepare for? 5 seasons, he's been through so much. Is there something that really stands out for you?
It's a very interesting and good question. It's a funny thing. Sometimes you think you'll look at a scene that's 3 lines long, and you'll think, okay, I know exactly what's going on with this thing. And you do your homework on it, you get in there, and maybe the homework that you do on it is because you feel so familiar with what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the homework that you do on it it doesn't need hours and hours and hours, so you get in there. But there's some element. It's like a deceptively simple scene. And then you discover in the doing of it, you think, oh, I need to be specific about this imaginative detail or this background detail or whatever, and then you sort of, you figure that out on the fly if you haven't figured it out beforehand. Those are always very challenging. You never know whether the challenges are going to arise. With the heavy-duty emotional scenes, you know pretty well that those are always going to be tough, and I prepare for everything, but obviously those types of scenes get a lot of work, a lot of homework.
Sure.
And I would say the one consistent thing really is for all the work that you do, or for all the homework that I do on it, you really never know how it's going to go until you're in the thick of it, and then you just have to say, oh, okay, this is how it's going. So, and then just go for it. You know, one of my qualities, I guess, or my methods is just to do a lot of homework and then to just leap off the cliff and go for it. And in that sense, it can be very challenging, and you don't really have a sense of how it's coming out at the end of the day. But overall, the feedback seems to be pretty good. So I'm just going to keep doing that process. And but it's hard to quantify. I would say every scene in its own way. There's no. For me, it never feels like any scene is easy.
Okay.
Sometimes we do it, and it feels like it's gone well, and that's always nice. And sometimes the opposite is true. But I do love it, but it's also very difficult.
Yeah.
And the thing that I never get tired of, though, is that I'm always learning. So.
Well, that's good. Well, yeah, I mean, because even the best baseball players in the country and football players are always still practicing and always still learning.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
Well, as we mentioned before, we've seen Sam change quite a bit over the 4 seasons and how he approaches things when it comes to rules and impulses. I heard an interview you gave not long ago and I really enjoyed the tie-in to the Dungeons and Dragons roleplay from back in the day.
Oh, that's great.
And you utilized the roleplay term of chaotic good to describe Sam.
Oh, yeah. I love that you know that term. He's the first person since I don't know, maybe ever that knows that.
This is also one of the advantages of having someone do an interview that also has a Geek podcast as well.
Right on.
And
right on. Yeah, I love that you knew what that meant. So, well, as you know, chaotic good refers to a guy who's willing basically to break any rule, but always for the right reasons and for a good reason, for a good cause. He's he's the quintessential. I think in many respects. I mean, he knows how to play by the book too. But there's a part of him that's kind of the quintessential rogue cop with the heart of gold.
Definitely.
And those characters are always attractive because they paint outside the lines, and they they usually hopefully have a sense of humor, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done. And there certainly was plenty of that in the latter part of the 4th season. We broke a lot of rules there, and broke rules that would have ended up in some of us getting fired if we'd gotten caught. So I like the fact that it was, it almost got into a bit of a moral gray area.
Mm-hmm.
And, I would be curious to know what some of the audience thought of that. My tendency to think that they probably thought that it was for a good cause, trying to protect Marlo.
Yeah.
She's gone off the rails. She's gone off her meds, and she's bipolar, and she's basically stalking this guy. So we went to great lengths, and that was one thing that I also thought, in terms of the moral gray area of it, that Sam's recruitment of Andy, that's kind of borderline. That was a pretty extreme thing to do.
Yeah.
To get Andy to help cover the whole thing up, to protect Marlo, and that she was willing to do that. But they addressed that in the show, and I guess hopefully the fans forgave Sam for that.
I'm sure they did. And so I know that there are members of that audience that'll be listening that'll totally dig the fact you have some Dungeons and Dragons in your past. Are there other geek things that you're kind of into still these days?
Oh, geez. Well, I'd probably still be playing that if I had anybody to play it with. But
well, you got the online game now.
That's true. That's right. No, I mean, I just never have time.
Yeah.
I wish I had more time to do that. Not so much. I mean, I'm not really geek stuff per se. I just got a new folding bike, which I'm totally in love with, and this isn't really a geek thing, but I smoke a tobacco pipe, and I'm total crazy geek over all things pipe and tobacco.
Okay.
Not cigarettes, but pipe stuff.
Yeah.
All right. My wife says that I'm beyond geek with that stuff, so that probably means obsessive.
Yeah.
But geeks are obsessive, right? So I have a nice pipe collection, and I collect tobaccos, and I research it all the time. And it's one of my when I like to distract myself when I have the time. And the other thing is, I love shows about physics. So,
really?
Astronomy and things like that.
Well, those are definitely completely legitimate things to geek out about. Everybody has things they geek out about. Well, it's kind of cool also to see that you've had so much success with a cop show, considering you got your first role in 21 Jump Street. Were you a fan of those 80s cop shows?
Well, it's funny you mentioned because somebody asked me out of the blue, well, what shows did you love when you were growing up? And I thought, well, I loved Magnum P.I. It was a great one, and I loved that he had a sense of humor. He wasn't like this perfect, he would get beaten up in a fight sometimes.
Yeah, he would.
Trying to think of the other shows, Charlie's Angels, that kind of thing. But then I thought, one of the shows that I really liked growing up was The Dukes of Hazzard.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was a big fan of that show, and I thought, why didn't I think of that? So as I woke up this morning, I was kind of reliving the whole credit sequence of The Dukes of Hazzard.
Had the song playing in your head?
That fancy, beautiful Telecaster, I think he's got at the beginning of it. Yeah, there was a lot of shows. I mean, plus I was, a big Bugs Bunny fan. He was a big influence on me growing up. But who didn't Bugs Bunny influence, right?
That's right.
In terms of cop shows, though, Police Story was one, I think, from way, way back.
Yeah. Is there one that you maybe like so much that if you could kind of take who you are as an actor now and drop yourself in a role in one of them, that there'd be one that you'd like to go back and be in if you could?
That's a great question, and it's not really from my childhood, but as I mentioned before, Michael Moriarty's part in, which is actually the part of a lawyer, this DA, in Law and Order, he just did such a magnificent and inspiring job in that part. I remember, I did an episode of Law and Order. I remember Sam Waterston saying that he had the best job in the city.
Yeah.
And, it's true, right? He lived, I think he lived in either in New York or Connecticut or both or whatever, but, he'd go to work, had this terrific job and a great show. He did it for 14 or 15 or 16 years, and it was just really interesting storylines. And, the cops would do the first half of the show, and then he'd get into the nitty-gritty of the case, and that was and the other thing is, as a kid, I thought it might be interesting to be a lawyer. So in television, the part that comes up for me that would be very appealing is a part like that. I think that was that I was just so inspired by Michael Moriarty and loved what he did, and Sam Waterston too was fantastic.
Yeah. Well, now you moved to Vancouver when you were a kid, and I understand that you speak French. Is it true that you speak French fluently?
My French is pretty good. Je peux parler français, des fois.
Well, that's more than me. I thought, now what needs to happen is, Sam can go undercover as a French bad guy or somebody, or impress everybody that, he's got that component in his arsenal. Well,
it's funny you say that because there's a bit where I do speak another language in the show, and it was a fun little bit to do, and I think the audience will get a real kick out of it. I won't say what language it is, but it'll be a juicy tidbit that I think people will get a kick out of in this coming season.
Awesome. Might throw the audience for a loop with the speaking unexpected language.
I certainly hope it throws them for a loop.
In a good way, too.
Yeah, they'll get a kick out of it.
Very awesome. And the other thing, too, that I thought was really interesting about some of the other kind of little tidbits of things that you've been able to do in the past, I saw one where you had even had the chance to portray Elvis Presley at the Charlottetown Festival.
Yep, that's right. In fact, I did a show today. I was doing Home and Family. They asked me to do an old Elvis song, so I did a little bit.
How awesome is that? So you sing and talk like Elvis?
Yeah, I did have to do that in the play. That's right. I sang and I had to do scenes and but today I just they wanted me to do a little music, so I tried to remember which one of the which song did I was fun to play, and I did a little bit of a song called Trouble.
Ah, okay. Very awesome. Well, there you go. There's another thing that if Sam has to go undercover as a Elvis impersonator, you've got that down.
I think there was a show recently. I think there's a show recently called, funnily enough, Memphis Blues that had something along that storyline. I haven't seen it, but it's like some cop who sort of has a part-time job as an Elvis impersonator or something. Anyway, I didn't see it.
Or, I think of, that scene in Honeymoon in Vegas where Burt and Gilliam and the flying Elvises are jumping out of the plane. The Utah chapter.
You can do anything with Elvis.
Yeah,
anything will, right. No pun intended, anything will fly with Elvis.
That's right. Elvis can show up as anything. If he can do weddings in Vegas, he can do just about anything else.
I don't know why that is, but
Yeah, I don't either.
He was a very unique entertainer, and now he's, just an icon of icons.
Do you have anything that you're working on outside of Rookie Blue that you'd want people to know about?
Well, I'm producing an updated, streamlined, non-traditional, modern version of Hamlet that we're hoping to get up in New York. Hopefully we're getting our first performance in mid-September of 2015. So that's been a really interesting challenge. We did a workshop of it in London, which went really wonderfully. I have a fantastic British director, and my lovely wife is going to be playing Ophelia. And we're very excited to try to get it up and running. It's proving to be a challenge. It's like the rough and tumble world of New York theater, but it's an exciting endeavor and very worthwhile one at that. So that's front and center for me. And of course, we got 9 more episodes of Rookie Blue to shoot. So we'll have a short break now, and then I'll be going back to do that.
Awesome. And people can follow you on Twitter at Ben Bass Official. I know you're pretty active there as well.
Yeah, when I wish I could get more of that in. I feel bad when I can't get to it on a regular basis, but when I do get to it, I just like to basically tweet with everybody, respond to everybody. I believe in being democratic about it and just getting back to as many people as you can. And I think it's fun for them, because if they get lucky, there's lots of people that get on there, but everybody basically has an equal chance of getting a reply, and it's really awesome. I enjoy interacting with them. The fans have been terrific, and they're fun to interact with.
Well, Ben Bass, it's been a pleasure talking with you today. I really want to congratulate you on all your success as an actor and on the show Rookie Blue. All the best of luck to you as you continue to build on that success, and thank you so much for the great conversation today on Talking with Hollywood.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. I've had a really, really good time. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time, and all the best to you.
Okay, when I say you can subscribe to Talking with Hollywood on iTunes, I really mean it this time. It's there. And if you don't use iTunes, feel free to stream the show on your phone, computer, or tablet from the website talkingwithhollywood.com. Also, I'll be adding other places to hear the show like Stitcher Radio. Every time another outlet picks it up, I'll post it on the site and announce it here. Please leave a rating or review when you have a moment. It's greatly appreciated. Next week, we'll stay on television and talk to David Gentoli and Bitsy Tulloch about their roles on the hit NBC series Grimm. I actually conducted those interviews in person at Texas Comic-Con in San Antonio last weekend, so definitely look forward to those. Feel free to send me an email via the contact page on the site. Let me know what you think of the show and some of the conversations you've heard. I'd like to share some of those on the program sometime. You also can follow me and share thoughts on Twitter. I can be found at Mr. Scott Murray. That's M.R. Scott, M-U-R-R-A-Y. I'd like to again thank my special guest, Ben Bass, and I want to thank you for listening, and I hope you'll join us next week for another engaging conversation with entertaining guests here on Talking with Hollywood.